He said, "You've grown up." I said, "So have you." One hand on the fridge, one on me, and suddenly family barbecues hit different. Hit the subscribe button, comment, and like this if you've ever wanted someone you shouldn't. It started with the heat. Not the kind that warns, no, the kind that lingers. The kind that seeps into your skin, settles in your bones, and makes you lie to yourself about what you're really feeling because the truth would burn too much. It was the kind of heat that didn't just melt ice. It melted boundaries. He was at our house again. Marco, my dad's best friend. Marco with the quiet eyes and slow, deliberate movements. The kind of man who never needed to raise his voice to command attention. He didn't just enter rooms, he filled them. Tan from weekend golf games, with a salt and pepper beard that looked too perfect to be accidental. His eyes, God, his eyes, looked like they'd seen war rain, and maybe something darker than either. He was 41. I was 21. Legally an adult. Emotionally, a wreck waiting to happen. A cocktail of unprocessed grief, naive confidence, and something more dangerous, curiosity. He leaned against the kitchen counter like he owned it, like he had always belonged there. His bottle of beer was slick with condensation, a tiny puddle forming beneath it on the marble. I hadn't seen him in nearly a year, not since I'd left for college. But he looked exactly the same. Or maybe that was the problem. He looked better. "Didn't think I'd see you back from college so soon," he said, voice like gravel soaked in honey. I shrugged, reaching into the fridge for water I didn't really want. Didn't think I'd care if I did. His laugh cracked the air like a match. Deep, low, familiar. Smart mouth. You always had one. I hated how warm my face felt at that. Or maybe it was just the heat. Maybe. There was a silence after that. Not awkward. Charged. He kept looking at me, and I knew he wasn't just seeing the little girl who used to trail after her dad and Marco on fishing trips. He was seeing the version of me I didn't know how to control yet. The version of me that wanted to ask questions I shouldn't. Do things I couldn't take back. I didn't know it then, but something shifted in that moment. A spark. An invitation. A dare neither of us voiced. The ceiling fan clicked overhead, slow and inefficient. My tank top stuck to my back, and my hair curled against my neck with sweat. He took another long sip of beer, never breaking eye contact. "You still studying psychology?" he asked, casual, but too casual. "Yeah. Just finished junior year." I leaned on the opposite counter, pretending not to notice the way his eyes moved. "That explains the attitude." He smirked. "You analyzing me right now?" I smiled, tight-lipped. "Maybe." "Be careful," he said, placing the bottle down, the thud louder than it needed to be. Sometimes when you stare too long into someone, they stare back. It was cryptic, maybe even a warning, but to me, it sounded like permission. That summer was filled with glances too long, conversations too sharp, and shirts that stayed off longer than necessary. It wasn't just the weather that was unbearable. It was the air between us. Thick, electric, like the silence before a thunderstorm. Marco had practically moved in. Not officially, of course. He still had his own house, but somehow his toothbrush ended up in our guest bathroom. His cologne lingered on throw pillows. His car keys sat on our kitchen counter like they belonged there. Like he belonged there. We pretended it was normal. Everyone did. My dad called it brotherhood, said Marco was just keeping an eye on things while he traveled for work. My mum was gone by then. Left quietly one winter, fed up with the silence that grew between her and Dad. That left me and Marco in a house full of excuses and things unsaid. The days blurred into a slow-motion film reel. Humid mornings, iced coffee, bare feet on tile. Late-night pool games. Side eyes over burnt burgers. Dripping swimsuits and stolen towels. He'd walk past me and graze my back like it was an accident. I'd flinch like it wasn't. Sometimes, when we played pool volleyball and I'd laugh too loud or lean too close, I'd catch him watching me with that look. The one that made my throat tighten and my stomach twist. The look that said he knew. That he remembered I wasn't a little girl anymore. One night, just before the sky gave up the last of its light, I caught him watching me stretch after a swim. The patio light buzzed overhead, bugs flinging themselves toward the glow like they didn't care what burned them. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said, beer in hand, voice low and unreadable. I didn't even turn to look at him, just pulled my hair into a messy bun and said, "What if I like danger?" Silence. When I finally glanced over, he wasn't there. Just the back door swinging shut behind him. I stood there a long time after that, wet feet glued to the pavement, trying to convince myself that silence wasn't an answer. I told myself it was harmless. It wasn't. That night, I dreamed of him. Not soft, romantic dreams, but jagged ones, full of tension and breathless pauses. I woke up sweating, my sheets tangled between my thighs, heartbeat far too fast for someone who hadn't moved. The next day, I tried to be normal. I put on a sundress that covered more than it revealed. I made toast for both of us, and didn't look up when he entered the kitchen shirtless, towel around his neck, smelling of chlorine and something more dangerous. We didn't speak much. But something shifted again, like we'd silently agreed to stop pretending. That evening, when the sky cracked with thunder and the pool glowed like a mirror of fire, I found him sitting alone on the patio, nursing a glass of whiskey. He didn't look at me when I joined him, didn't even move when I sat too close. Our arms brushed. I didn't say anything. He didn't either. The game had changed. We just didn't have the language for it yet. I caught him staring. At my lips. At my hips. At the curve of my spine when I reached for something. Once, when I was changing shirts in my room, door not fully latched, maybe on purpose, maybe not, I turned and found it slightly ajar. And there he was, Marco. He stood still in the hallway, half-shadowed, hand resting on the frame like he wasn't sure if he meant to be there or just couldn't help it. He didn't move, didn't apologize, just stared, eyes dark and heavy with something I didn't have the vocabulary for. And then, without a word, he closed the door. Quiet, controlled, like it hadn't happened. But it had. And what terrified me most was that I wanted him to come back. The rain came hard that night. Thunder cracked the sky open like an accusation, and the power flickered twice before giving up completely. The house dropped into stillness, the kind that presses on your chest and doesn't let you breathe right. I couldn't sleep. The air inside felt thick and restless, like it knew something was coming. I poured a drink I didn't need, bourbon, his favorite, and padded barefoot through the dark until I reached the porch. He was already there, sitting on the old bench with one leg up, elbow resting on his knee, bottle in hand. A halo of smoke curled around his head from the cigarette. I didn't know he still smoked. The porch light, running on backup power, buzzed faintly overhead, casting everything in a tired amber. I hesitated, then stepped outside. Rain tapped on the roof, urgent and steady. "Can't sleep either?" I asked. He turned his head, slow, like it cost him something to look at me. His eyes were tired. And something else. Wounded, maybe. Or burning. "There's things I want to say," he said, voice rough, almost a whisper. "But can't." I stood still for a moment, heartbeat climbing, the bourbon burning already. Then I said, "Then don't say them." And I stepped closer. He didn't move, didn't flinch or look away. His chest rose slowly, deliberately. The silence between us felt alive, breathing. My skin prickled with tension. He was close enough now that I could smell the bourbon on his breath, the faint smoke in his shirt. The electricity in the air wasn't from the storm. I sat beside him, too close, let my knee touch his. Didn't pretend it was accidental. He stared forward, jaw clenched, like he was at war with himself. "It's wrong," he muttered, more to the rain than to me. "But we're not stopping," I said. And still, he didn't look at me. But his hand, resting between us on the bench, shifted, palm up, barely there, like an offering he wasn't sure I'd take. I stared at it for a second. Then I slipped my fingers into his. His grip was quiet. Final. Something in the world tilted. I kissed him first. I shouldn't have. But I did. It happened so quickly I barely remembered deciding. One moment we were just sitting there. Fingers tangled, breaths matching. The next, I leaned in like gravity had grown hands and pulled me forward. His lips were warm, dry from the night air, still and surprised. Then his hand shot to my wrist tight, like he might push me back, like he might say no. But he didn't. He paused. A breath held between us. A second that stretched too long. And then, he kissed me back. Harder, deeper. Like something inside him had snapped loose. Like he'd been starving for years, and I was a breath he forgot he needed. His other hand reached up, fingers slipping into my hair, anchoring me to him as if letting go would mean we'd vanish. The rain poured louder, running down the roof like it was trying to drown the world. But all I could hear was the rush of my own pulse in my ears and the soft, desperate sounds escaping both of us. His tongue traced mine with hesitation first, then hunger. Years of restraint cracking open. I pressed closer, feeling the heat of him through every layer between us. My hand slid to his chest, found his heartbeat thrumming hard and fast beneath my palms. When we finally pulled apart, the world tilted. Breathless, dizzy. His forehead rested against mine. His fingers still tangled in my hair. "What the hell are we doing?" he whispered, like he already knew the answer, but couldn't bear to hear it said aloud. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I don't want to stop." He didn't say anything right away. Just looked at me. Not the way he used to. Not like a family friend. Not even like a man 10 steps ahead of temptation. He looked at me like he saw the whole storm inside me, and realized it matched his own. He nodded slowly, like the war inside him had finally lost, like he was surrendering to something he'd tried too hard to fight. And just then, the thunder cracked directly above us. The porch light flickered, then died. The storm outside got louder, but nothing drowned out the silence between us. Because it wasn't silent anymore. It was full of everything we'd never said, and everything we were about to do. The affair started that night. There was no going back. No pretending the kiss was a mistake, or the storm had muddled our judgment. It began in whispers, in glances that lasted too long across the breakfast table, in the subtle shift of how we moved around each other when my dad was home. Like we were learning a new choreography under fluorescent lights. He started parking his truck 2 blocks down, always the same spot, under the jacaranda tree with the split trunk. Sometimes I'd catch a petal in his hair when he slipped through the back gate. He never noticed. I never told him. The first time we slept together, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't fumbling or shy. It was deliberate, quiet, a slow unfolding. He kissed every part of me like he was memorizing it. Like he knew this was something we'd never get to keep. So he wanted to take pieces of me wherever he went. He taught me things, not just about touch, about control, about surrender, about timing, how long to hold a look, how far to let a moan travel before it gave us away. He didn't just want my body. He wanted to undo me. "You're gonna break me," he said one afternoon. We'd skipped lunch and tangled in my sheets, sweaty and breathless, the fan doing little to ease the heat. I traced the curve of his chest, felt the flutter of his heart against my fingertip. "Maybe you need breaking," I said. He looked at me then. Really looked. Not like a man who'd made a mistake. Not like someone trying to climb out of guilt. But like someone who'd finally been found. And he smiled. Slow. Soft. Sad. Like he knew he'd pay for it later. But in that moment, it was worth it. We spoke little outside those hours. Sometimes I'd pass him a glass of water, while my dad talked on the phone in the next room. Our fingers would touch, just barely, and my entire body would react like I'd been lit from inside. We were careful, but not enough. My sheets stopped smelling like me. They smelled like him. And I didn't change them. My dad found out. Not by walking in. Not by catching us wrapped in sheets or shadows. It was a voicemail. One I forgot to delete. 3 seconds too long. For words too raw. "Miss you already, baby." He played it while fixing the porch light. I was inside, fresh out of the shower. Towel slung low, skin still steaming from the water. When I walked into the kitchen, he was standing by the counter, phone in hand. Frozen. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You're sleeping with Marco?" I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, bare-chested, dripping silence onto the tile. The air felt heavier than it ever had, like the house itself had turned against me. "I trusted him," my dad said, his voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. "He was family." I swallowed hard. My throat burned. "He still is," I said, quieter than I meant. "Maybe more than you ever were." That did it. His face shifted. Not just hurt now, but hollow, like I'd reached inside and taken something that could never be returned. He didn't yell, didn't curse. He just walked past me, out the front door, and slammed it so hard it felt like the whole house flinched. I stood there for a long time, towel slipping, skin cold, waiting for something, anything. But that night, Marco didn't come over, didn't call, didn't send a pedal soft message or a knock 2 blocks down. And I thought it was over, that the heat wave had broken, that everything we'd built in stolen silence had evaporated under the sound of one voicemail. I lay in bed, sheets untouched, heart louder than the thunder outside. Alone, ashamed, and angry that I missed him more than I hated myself. 2 weeks passed. 14 days of static silence. No calls. No knocks. No baby. Just empty rooms and echoes of things I couldn't forget. I didn't eat much. Didn't sleep unless my body forced it. Every knock on a neighbor's door, every passing truck, sounded like a maybe, like a promise returning. But it never was. Until it was. That night, the air was thick again. Heat like a second skin. I was curled on the sofa in one of his old shirts I'd sworn I'd throw away. Then came the knock. Not frantic. Not soft. Just sure. I opened the door slowly. And there he was. Marco. No words. No excuses. Just a small overnight bag in one hand and something heavier in his eyes. I lost a friend, he said, voice graveled and soft, like he'd repeated it to himself too many times. But I can't lose you too. He stepped inside, dropped the bag, took my face in both hands like it was something sacred, and kissed me. Not with hunger, not with guilt, with certainty, like the world had cracked open, and this, we, were what it had been hiding all along. No hiding, no fear, no back doors or secret knocks. Just him and me. Love, real love, doesn't stay buried. It leaks through cracks, floods rooms, burns through caution like wildfire. It demands to be seen. And sometimes, the person you're not supposed to fall for is the very one your soul wrote letters to before your body ever knew how to respond. That night, the heat returned, but softer this time. Not like danger, like home.